So after thinking about the Garnacho situation for the last few weeks, I think I've come to a solid conclusion, and that is that Manchester United, at least in January anyway, are selling the wrong player. See, I'm not 100% for selling Garnacho or 100% against it, as I think it depends on who we bring in as his replacement, how we use the money that's brought in and who we sell him to, but I'll come on to that later on in the video. But in terms of whether Garnacho should be the priority to sell in January, I just think that United would be much better off selling Højlund rather than Garnacho, and it's pretty simple why. First of all, the club already wants to sell Rashford, and so if he ends up going alongside Garnacho, we are losing two what I would define as inside forwards who play in those two interior forward positions in the front three, as well as losing the only two attackers in the squad other than Ahmad who provide any sort of pace in behind the back line from these wider positions. Secondly, Garnacho can play in two positions in Amorim's 3-4-3, potentially four if you could maybe see him being developed as a wing-back to occasionally play there, which is debatable, but Højlund can certainly only play as a centre-forward, which means if Xerxes is starting, Højlund doesn't get into the 11 on the pitch, unless Amorim adapts or changes how the front three operates, which we haven't seen him do so far. Thirdly, I think both Garnacho and Højlund are around the same current ability, and if you look back at what they've done for United, maybe you prefer one over the other in terms of what they've contributed, but there isn't much between them. However, I think if you give both players full confidence, Garnacho's game improves significantly, whereas I still think Højlund lacks overall quality in his game, which isn't improved massively through an increase in confidence. Garnacho's game, on the other hand, to me is fully dependent on how confident he is. His confidence affects his decisiveness when he's receiving the ball and driving at the fullback, just shifting the ball a tad quicker or eradicating the hesitancy from his game, which can inhibit his ability to get past a man and get into shooting or crossing positions. Højlund's hold-up play and his movement inside the final third and inside the box are his two main weaknesses in his game, but I don't see them improving significantly when his confidence is high, compared to when he's playing on low confidence. It's more down to his overall ability and football IQ. Fourthly, in my opinion, Garnacho has higher potential than Højlund, or at least has greater probability of reaching the elite level in the next 3 to 4 years. Højlund, I think, could take till after 25, and it may take into his late 20s till he hits that level. Now, before I carry on the analysis, a quick reminder, I do have an in-game Instagram group chat where we do have analysis and discussion throughout all the Manchester United games. I've also got a tactical ebook which should be released at the end of this month towards the start of next month, and if you are in the Instagram group chat when that does come out, you will get it for free, which will work out slightly cheaper than if you were just to buy it and you weren't in the group chat. So if you do want to sign up to my Patreon, I'll leave it linked in all the usual places, the eye above, description, comment section, and on the end screen after this video. So if you look at our options to play in the interior forward roles in the front three, if Ahmad is playing as a right wing back and Bruno is playing in the midfield double pivot, which I think for a lot of games you could actually argue is their best roles in the system for the functioning of the entire team, particularly against deeper defensive blocks where United are going to dominate possession, such as in a game against Rangers, the options to then play in the front three either side of Xerxes as the starter or Højlund as the alternative centre forward are not just limited but practically non-existent. I mean, we can get away with using Eriksen in the front three on occasion, and I certainly do prefer to use him in one of those two positions either side of the centre forward, with Bruno Fernandes playing in the midfield double pivot rather than the other way around, just because I don't think Eriksen has the athleticism to play in the midfield double pivot, but there's surely no way people can consider this viable even in the short term, let alone for the rest of the season. I mean, he just doesn't have the pace that we need. There were multiple times throughout the game against Rangers where having a player in that role who even had average pace, such as Bruno Fernandes or Mason Mount, would have made a significant difference. One that comes to mind is when he and Ahmad exchanged a 1-2 and Ahmad was able to burst past the Rangers defender, but Eriksen just didn't have the pace to keep up with Ahmad and make a run into the open space, which left Ahmad with no other option but to go back in field where the play was congested, looking for Xerxes, and the attack broke down. And certainly if you are using Xerxes as a centre forward, you most definitely need pace either side of him in order to take advantage of the space created when one of the centre backs is drawn out of the back line with his deeper movement. Mason Mount would be perfect for this role as the right-sided interior forward, but he's never fit. Rashford doesn't appear to have a future. Anthony is leaving and he's also shit and just embarrassing in general. So literally Garnacho is not just a option, but he may be our best option currently. Højlund, on the other hand, doesn't start unless Xerxes is being rested, which seems to be clear now as Amorim didn't even switch Xerxes out from the Premier League to the Europa League games. Also, if Højlund is playing second fiddle to Xerxes for the rest of the season, which I think he probably will, his value isn't going to increase from here, it's only going to go down, so surely now is the best time to sell him. Garnacho, on the other hand, even if we were to bring in a Rashford replacement, is still most probably going to be a starter most weeks, or at least feature heavily week in, week out, and so the probability of Garnacho retaining his value come the summer is significantly higher than Højlund in my opinion. Also, the reality with the Garnacho transfer is that most likely if we want full value, which is £60 million, we have to sell to Chelsea. If not, I can't see Napoli paying more than £45 million for him, considering they sold Kvaratskhelia, who is a player without doubt who's better on current ability, and they would definitely argue as a player with greater potential for £59 million just the other week. And there really aren't any other suitors who are going to pay that sort of money because it's January, whereas come the summer, there's most likely not going to be less clubs interested in him, probably more, because first of all, clubs in general tend to spend more money in the summer anyway, and clubs will be selling players, opening up positions and finances for United to get full value without selling him to a Premier League rival. The question is who would be interested in Højlund in January and for what price? Well, I'd be looking at least £45 million up front, maybe £50 million, with add-ons taking it to £65 million in the long run. If RB Leipzig were to sell Sesko to Arsenal in the last week of the window for their £65 to £70 million valuation, then spending £20 to £25 million less on another high potential young striker would definitely be feasible. I've also seen AC Milan linked with both Rasmus Højlund and Joshua Zirkzee in January. I'm not sure they'd have the money to buy the player outright in January, maybe you'd have to do a loan with an option to buy or an obligation to buy, but given that they have Tammy Abraham on loan to the end of the season, Luka Jovic, who has 6 months left on his contract, and a 32-year-old Alvaro Morata currently, you'd imagine that come the summer they'd be in the market for a striker, and Rasmus Højlund, given his age and the fact that he's already semi-proven in both the Serie A and the Premier League, he could be one of their main targets. However, if you are selling Garnacho, you definitely need to bring in someone who's an upgrade in terms of their current ability, who would provide the pace and the ball carrying ability that would be lost by selling Garnacho and Rashford as well, but also someone who is, or at least has, elite level potential that can be realised in the near future. For me, there are 3 standout candidates, and all would cost in excess of £50 million. Matthias Cunha, Lois Openda and Xavi Simons. Now, Xavi Simons wouldn't be available until the summer, but if he was the number one target, I don't see the point in rushing to another option just for 6 months. We may as well just hold on to Garnacho until the summer. But for me, because we are losing Rashford and Garnacho, both of whom I'd define as inside forwards, who primarily are there to provide pacing behind the back line, I'd go with either Cunha or Openda, who are both rapid and have that burst of acceleration alongside the goal scoring ability to balance out the front three, if used alongside Zirkzee and either Bruno or Ahmad from the right. Now, in a separate video, I'll compare both Cunha and Openda, as well as Cunha would be my first choice, as I said in a previous video. I'll leave that video linked in the eye above. Depending on who else is brought in, I could make a solid argument for Openda over Cunha as well, and so I'll break down how both players would work tactically in Amorim's system, compare their skill sets from the eye test, as well as compare both statistically, before also looking at some alternative options as well. So make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell for that. But overall, if Garnacho is to leave, I think it has to be someone of Openda, Cunha or Xavi Simons' level. I would take Nkunku on loan for the rest of the season. João Felix I would like, but that's more from a personal point of preference because he's one of my favourite players to watch, and I think he could be excellent in that Zirkzee false 9 role. But really we need a different type of forward to replace Garnacho, someone in the mould of Nkunku who can play as a second striker and provide pace and movement in behind the back line from those central positions, whilst also being as close to the elite level as we can possibly get. There has been talk of players like Tyler Dibbling and Nene Dogeles, but for me, I just put these type of transfers in the same category as Dogu. Far too expensive for the profile of player that United need and what they'd be getting with these players. The issue with Garnacho is not his potential, it's his current ability, and whilst you could argue that Dibbling is a more complete player than Garnacho, certainly in terms of his ball carrying, dribbling and progressive passing, just by looking at his goal scoring and chance creation metrics from his FB Ref report in the Premier League this season, you can see his output is nowhere near the level United currently need. And so in terms of current ability, we aren't really improving the squad significantly. And once again, we seem to be building for the future, whilst the squad falls apart in the present. I'm also not even sure that Dibbling is a stylistic match for what we need in a Garnacho replacement, as primarily he's going to play from the right side, and we already have Ahmad who can play either as a right-sided interior forward or at right wing back. And even then, you describe Dibbling as more of a winger than an inside forward, someone who's going to sit on the outside of the fullback, looking to receive the ball to feet, rather than starting centrally between the lines and bursting in behind the back line. Whereas replacing Garnacho, ideally, we need more of an inside forward who can play in the front three, ideally both from the right and from the left. And so once again, I just don't have faith that United are going to replace Garnacho, either with the current quality or the stylistic fit that we need. So let me know who your ideal Garnacho replacement would be, and if you do want to sign up to the Instagram group chat, I'll leave that linked on the end screen now.